Pete, and welcome to our second session around strategic messaging. So, today we're going to talk about how we will build up that messaging. Before we start, tell us a bit more about who is Pete and why can Pete so much talk about storytelling and strategic messaging?
So my name is Pete, and I work with companies to build their narrative, their story, their strategic messaging, which is basically everything you say about yourself as a company. My background is sales, so I used to talk the talk and walk the walk. Um,
Hmm.
and I was on commission anywhere between 15 to 60% commission based work. So I learned very quickly that if your story is better, you're going to sell more. So I became really good at telling stories. Um, I based myself on neuroscience, um, partly out of frustration because coming from sales, it was very binary. You either make the deal or you don't make the deal. And I got into marketing later, and then that was an opinion game. Oh, this is fun. Let's do this. Or competitors do ABC. Let's do that as well. Or this worked at my last company. Let's do it here. But there's no scientific basis as to why certain things would work.
Hmm.
And I'd been working on that for a long time in various capacities, and I had an unhealthy fascination with psychology and behavioral economics and cognitive science. So I said, what if we were to like link those two? Like, how do people process information and process a narrative, and how is their brain wired, and can we use that? Um, so basically, I build messaging for companies based on two main pillars, which is a couple of decades of sales experience and brain science or
Yeah.
neuroscience.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds great, and I think we all understand why you're the right person to talk about that strategic messaging. And as said, today we're going to talk about building up the messaging. So when we backtrack to our previous session, we were talking about the three different stories that you had: the founders, the sales team, and marketing. How we build one narrative around this, and at the same time, we talk about how to start, what are principles, and so on. So now we are going to start building up that messaging. So when we have done that first set of work, what is then step two to build up that messaging?
So the first thing we do is we gather information. And the information that you need is often already in the company. It's just in the minds of your top performers, your top salesperson. Like, what does your top salesperson say to close a deal?
Mhm.
And the challenge there is to go and get that information, to harvest that information during the workshops, to make that available to the people that are not selling as much. And the way I do that is with a very clear framework. I call it five intents. And five intents is basically the five things you need to do to change somebody's mind, the five things you need to do to uh, convince somebody to buy your product. And they are Fascinate. So Fascinate is, start the conversation, attract attention, get past the scroll, and make sure they read your email. So that's like where the subject lines or the titles really matter. The second one is educate, explain people what you do, what makes that valuable, and what's the importance of it to them. The third is differentiate, what makes you different, better than other solutions. The fourth is validate, establish trust, and the fifth is motivate. So what I'm doing in the initial stages is I have these workshops in company, and I have just conversations like, hey, how you talk about yourself, and you walk me through a sales conversation. And whenever something pops up that is important, I'll classify that in one of those five categories.
Okay.
So in the beginning, you're basically collecting a lot of dots, and the second phase is to connect those into a narrative. And a narrative, it can be custom made for a specific prospect, or a narrative can be more general for the market when you put it on your website, for example. Or it can be highly personalized if you want to have like a different message for the user, the manager, the C level, for example. We talk about messaging layering for different audiences. Um, but the first phase is to spend a lot of time gathering insights, from people. And so that's one. Two is part of my responsibility is to be the dumbest person in the room and to be able to say, like, I don't get it, guys. Like, you've been talking for 20 minutes and I don't get it. I don't understand what makes you valuable. And then they'll protest. They'll go like, yeah, but you don't understand. I know. And you're paying me. What kind of chance do you think you have in the open market? Right. So I come in with that same kind of lack of information as a potential customer who, just, got your ad or saw something, got a link forwarded to them. Like, I don't know. Why should I care? And that kind of lack of knowledge is invaluable. This makes it very difficult for people to create their own messaging. I know dentists don't work on themselves. There's a reason for that. It's really difficult to do. Messaging, same thing. It's virtually impossible to make messaging that is any good with people you have internally because they know the product too well, and their assumption is that all this knowledge is also readily available in the customer or the prospect's mind. So the way we do that is I come in knowing nothing, blank, literally blank canvas with a 5 intents on it. And then we fill that in workshops. And then what happens often is we reorganize the sequence of things in decreasing strength. So for example, if I'm going to validate or establish trust, there's a number of things I can do to establish trust. The most clear one is if you don't like it, you get your money back, right? This is what works for Zalando. I've completely de-risked the offering. So yeah, you can try it and try it for 90 days. If you don't like it, no harm, no foul. And then you go down, it's like, okay, what do our specialists say, analysts, journalists, subject matter experts, what do they say about us? And you go down, and all the way at the bottom is our story, right? Because if you're a startup, for example, and you're working with enterprise customers, they want to know if you're going to be there in 5 years. So give them the story, the milestones, the financing, but don't lead with that. And then we say, okay, what's the strongest? What's a little bit less strong? Same thing with Fascinate. If you work on Fascinate, there's a number of ways you can fascinate. And quite often they say, oh, we have to find the pains. Sometimes there are no pains, right? Porsche doesn't sell cars to people that are late all the time. So what does Porsche sell if it's not a pain, right? Porsche sells something else. Porsche sells an identity. Porsche sells stuff that you have to look into. And your product as well. It's not always about the pain, but there are immediate priorities. What am I working on right now? It's very easy to sell a fire extinguisher to somebody whose house is on fire. So what's your core priority today? If we can identify that, that's really strong. What is an unconsidered need? So, you've been recently promoted to a job and we've got this product that can eliminate 80% of the issues with that job. You're going to want to know about that, right? Or here's what we've done at your main competitor. That's fascinating. We're going to attract attention with that. And only then do you go into like, are there any pains? What are the gains that they're after? Are there any risks they are exposed to that they want to limit? And then there's the typical psychology ones, right? The status, we're back at Porsche now. Status, identity, certainty, safety, autonomy, self-reliance. Like these are all triggers that fascinate people. And we basically go through all of them and say, okay, what do we have for this? And sometimes, pains is not one of them, and sometimes pains is a big one. If you want to sell a Porsche, don't talk about pains, right? What would a Porsche pain be?
Yeah. It's a good one. I don't know, compensation or whatever. Yeah. Yeah, but you're right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, you're right, and it's very fascinating that you start step by step. You have that 5 intent framework. I strongly believe, exactly as you said, not everybody has those pains, and then we talk about priorities. What I wanted to know is, when you build this up, and maybe I asked this question too soon, do you also think about what messaging we will bring top of funnel, mid funnel, bottom funnel, or are we not there yet?
Well, there's a correlation between the 5 intents and the funnel method. So I have a problem with the funnel method because the funnel method is a representation of our internal systems. It is not a representation of the buyer journey or the mental processes that your prospect goes through when they want to buy something. And these processes can be different. So it runs in parallel, and there is a correlation. Top of funnel, it'll be more about the fascinate. Middle of funnel would be more about educate and differentiate. Sorry, and then bottom of funnel would be more about validate, and motivate. Having said that, sometimes a client will say, "This happens to me," right? Apologies. So this will happen to me. Sometimes a client will say, "Oh, we've done an exercise with a branding agency. We've got really burned on it. We blew, like, I don't know, anywhere between 15 and 60 grand. I've got a folder of invoices to represent that typical average price. Um, so why would we do that again?" And then my top of funnel stuff is not Fascinate. It's differentiate. What makes me different to a branding agency? And then I have to say, listen, I use brain science. I only do this. I do nothing else. I don't have like a team of designers and project managers to fund in a big fancy office. So a number of things that outline what makes my approach different to them. And then the second thing is I have to get them in touch with an existing customer. And then that is their top of funnel. Potentially for another client, their top of funnel looks completely different. But what you have with those 5 and 10s is the insight to understand what the informational need of a prospective customer or a prospect is throughout that process, detecting that need and knowing exactly how to respond to it. And that alone gives you kind of a structure to work on, even on informal conversations where you kind of detect, okay, this customer is asking me about XYZ. I know exactly what their informational need is. I know which intent matches to that, and I know exactly what to say at this point for maximum effect.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's a bit of well, a paradigm shift for many salespeople that have been used to push, 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 try to convince. So how do you train then the salespeople with this?
So the old school sales training, it had its merits back in the day when basically, as a salesperson, you had more information than your prospect.
Mhm.
That's flipped on its head, right? The prospect has so much information, they don't even know what to do with it anymore. They're overloaded.
Yeah,
So they're looking to you not for that missing piece of information, but they're looking to you for telling them what piece of information is most relevant for them. Um, and the whole push methodology where it's almost like manipulative, where you know exactly where you want to end and you ask themselves leading questions to have them make the synaptic jump and come to the conclusion that you want them to come to, that's gone out the window, right? The decision making teams for corporate sales have grown immensely, and a lot of these people you will never speak to. So good luck putting pressure on people that you'll never meet. How do you do that? So, and this is something that I think all of my sales managers that I've ever worked with were really frustrated about, is I didn't care about results. I didn't care about targets. I told them flat out, like, the end result, the target or the target attainment, that's a side effect. It's a side
mhm,
effect of me working towards getting the story into the customer's hands and into the customer's minds, and making sure that I help them most effectively. And there is a bit of a paradigm shift, both for sales managers and for salespeople themselves. And you see salespeople that were very successful previously, the typical natural salesperson, could sell snow on the North Pole. Those people sometimes struggle with the new methodology of doing things because it's just who they are. They blah blah blah, and they have the gift of gab. Um, and then you see other salespeople that were struggling before all of a sudden surpass the top guys because they get it. All of a sudden they have an insight that they didn't have before, where before they were frustrated and they were like, I'm doing all my calls, I'm doing everything right. Why am I not closing? I'm working really hard. I'm not getting the result.
yeah,
And all of a sudden you see that flipped on its head. And you see these people go in with a lot more confidence and a lot more conviction into these sales conversations. So there's no single way of doing that, and it kind of depends on the salesperson themselves. And some of them just refuse. I wish I could say it works in 100% of the cases,
mhm,
but some of them just go back to their previous way of doing things, and my messaging just disappears in a drawer, and that was it.
yeah.
But yeah, it's par for the course. And if a percentage of the junior salespeople pick it up and be better and get better really quickly, they don't have to do the whole um, on the job training. Because what happens as a salesperson, he's like, you're a junior. We're going to give you 100% target attainment for the first 1 or 2 quarters, depending on where your company's located. And in those 6 months, you need to figure out what a good salesperson is. So you shadow salespeople, you try to pick up, you make notes, but you're not doing that in a very systematic way. What I'm doing is I'm taking that period away. You can have a junior salespeople have a super convincing sales conversation after a few days when they've been exposed to good messaging. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
so
But
it's
that's also
more
then,
sales enablement than it is training. It's like here's something you could be using. Use it to the best of your abilities, because guess what? You're very intelligent people. You know when to use which part of this, and that makes it much better than a fixed narrative. Like here's a script. People hate that because you
yeah,
can hire a monkey to do their work, and they know that.
true.
They sense it. There's no satisfaction in that. But once you say, like, these are the puzzle pieces, you put them together as you see fit, or the Lego pieces, right? These are the things that you can put together as you see fit, and use the one that is most appropriate in your opinion at that time, and you own the results of that. That
Yeah.
changes things quite dramatically.
Yeah. And so when you start a campaign with a client, how to then, so first of all, yes, we need to adjust our strategic messaging, number one. Um, is there then immediately insight, okay, we need to roll this out to our sales as well as a given, or do we need to bring some clarification to this as well?
For me, it's a condition. Like if you're not rolling it out to sales, why do it, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Because it's
Messaging belongs
marketing,
in the
right?
hands of everybody who's customer facing,
Yeah.
right? That's the interface. The interface is I'm a customer, whether this is I'm a prospect and I talk to marketing, or I'm a hot lead, or I'm a hot prospect and I talk to sales, or I'm an existing customer, I talk to customer success. These are customer facing roles. And I always say there's also we talked about messaging layering, adapting messaging to different layers in the organization. There's also messaging sequencing, where you say the first message is marketing that ends up in a commitment of, you can call me, I want a demo, right? I want a sales conversation. The second narrative is for sales that ends up in, I'm going to sign the deal. And the third one is in the hands of customer success. And the decision there is, I'm going to remain a customer. I'm going to renew my contract at the end of the year if I'm in SaaS, for example, or I'm going to buy the next product if this one is end of life from you as well. So I always say that if you're in a customer facing role, whether that is marketing, sales, or customer success, you're in sales. You're just selling different things. So I'm a strong believer in getting messaging in everybody's hands as quickly as possible. And quite often you'll have like a company-wide presentation that says, okay, here's what we've been working on. We're going to present it once. By that time, everybody's given me input, so they're all on board with the larger message.
Mhm.
And we do one handoff where there's some last comments, and then from then on, they take it from there.
Okay. Okay. No, sounds really great. And if you look at the sales messaging, as you said, sales has changed completely. I see high performance when they keep on doing the same messaging, they start failing for me for two reasons. Number one, the
Yeah.
market is changing, the wishes
Mm-hmm.
are changing. Secondly, um, they're so used to high performance, it becomes routine for them, and they
Mm-hmm.
forget the message that they have brought 100 times. They miss a couple of hooks that they don't tell their prospects anymore, and their performance starts to, well, flatline and then
Exactly.
starts to drop. So, and this is why you have to revisit and the messaging and as well as the performance of those high performers then as well. And as a high performer as well, you should do it yourself.
Absolutely. So for a prospect, the value of the sales conversation is net new information. Like,
Yeah.
what are you bringing me that I don't know today that's going to help me do my job better, or make a decision, make a more informed decision? The value is not reiteration of what you've
Mhm.
told me last time or what I've heard from all of your competitors, right? There's a unity of messaging sometimes where you talk to three salespeople and the only thing that's changed is the logo, but
Mhm.
there's
Yeah.
no like new insights. And that's where the value is. The value is in information that you can give me that I didn't have this morning. That's when I walk out of a sales conversation and go like, wow, that was valuable. I learned something new. I learned something valuable that can help me. And that's also the thing, that if you've got some more elaborate messaging, is you don't have to deliver the whole thing at once. Right?
Mhm.
You can have like little pieces that here's an extra, here's another extra, here's another extra. And all of a sudden you're building this momentum of new information and valuable information and insights that will lead to the sales process moving forward.
Now, maybe also to make the distinction, it's not a sales methodology that you sell, right? It's something in the end completely different.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is a storytelling methodology. It is basically a system that will help you articulate value and attract attention and inspire action. And it works in a business context, but it works in virtually every interhuman communication context you can think of.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, sounds great. So, Pete, thank you very much for sharing that information on building up that messaging. We will have a third session where we will start talking about delivering a message specifically designed for specific layers of people you will talk to. And I'm really looking forward for that next session as well.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Pete. See ya.